In an exclusive interview coming up next, two rock legends share the story of one of the most influential songs in history. It was a #1 hit in the midst of the British invasion in America and in Britain, and it changed the course of music, casting its net into the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, and beyond. Next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. Telling you, if you love the greatest music, the best of the rock and roll era, the true classics of our lives, you're gonna love this channel. Just subscribe below right now, hit the bell so you never miss out. We do it every day. You get insight directly from the legends. And do look us up on Patreon, the link is below. There's another catalog of content. You can become an honorary producer with us. Now on this channel, we really cover it all. We recognize the great hidden gems of the decades. We talk about the biggest hits and the greatest albums, but there are definitely levels to these videos. And it's always a treasure when we get to go in depth on a song that transcends all those things, chart positions, genres, or eras. Mr. Tambourine Man by the Byrds is one such song. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, we've got the story straight from the co-pilots of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame band, the Byrds. Roger McGuinn and David Crosby. They're going to break down this masterpiece next. Now, the song was, of course, written by Bob Dylan, released as the first track from the acoustic side of his 1965 album, Bringing It All Back Home.
Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me.
The song, of course, has been covered by so many artists. There's Judy Collins.
Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me.
Stevie Wonder.
Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play
Odetta.
Play a song for me.
The Byrds version remains the definitive version and life-changing, I might add. It went to #1 on both sides of the Atlantic. It was the Byrds' first single on Columbia Records. It was also the name of their debut album. It's a vital song for various reasons. The first being that Mr. Tambourine Man was a major influence on folk rock, Americana, jangle pop, country rock. Many have argued that this song pioneered a lot of those movements. But what can't be argued is the Byrds' influence on iconic artists who would follow, like Tom Petty, Bruce Springsteen, REM, so many more. This song was certainly a turning point in music. I mean, it launched the Byrds, as I said, but it also convinced Bob Dylan to go electric. And it helped jumpstart the folk rock movement for sure. This song came during that glorious time in the 1960s where a respectful and friendly competition pushed music past the known limits, and it broke all the rules. Many bands have cited Mr. Tambourine Man as a game changer for them and how they approach music from then on. I mean, when you have the Beatles freaking out, you've done something right. Roger McGuinn and David Crosby will relate the story of the Byrds' definitive version in our interview next, but it's interesting to know that Bob Dylan wrote and composed Mr. Tambourine Man in early 1964. It was around the same time that he wrote Chimes of Freedom.
The chimes of freedom flashing.
Another of his songs that the Byrds have covered.
The chimes of freedom flashing.
So Bob Dylan wrote Mr. Tambourine Man. It was right after he had been to Mardi Gras in New Orleans. This was during a cross-country road trip that he took with some friends. I believe their pot was involved. It was from San Francisco to New York. Dylan completed the song sometime between the middle of March and late April of that year. It was when he came back to New York after the trip. You can definitely hear the influence of Mardi Gras within the song.
And there is no place I'm going to.
I like how author Nigel Williamson pointed out that it was in the swirling and fanciful imagery of those song lyrics. Of course, the song had 4 verses originally, but the Byrds version cut that down considerably. They chose to use only the second verse, and Roger McGuinn will explain his reasoning behind that in the interview and how the Byrds came to recording it. So let's get into that right now. As we go into this interview, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear, who helps to make this possible, helping us keep the music alive. These are the glasses I wear every single day. When you go to Zenni.com, you can choose from hundreds of styles, colors, looks, all sorts of things. You can add amazing features like blue blocks to protect your eyes from digital blue light. There's the anti-fog and anti-glare protection as well. I have it on these. When you order a pair of Zennis, you're not going to want for another brand, I can tell you that. Here's Roger McGuinn and David Crosby on the story behind Mr. Tambourine Man. Mr. Tambourine Man, tell me, as you started, because you guys recorded the single early on, Please Let Me Love You.
Please let me love you a while.
So you're playing rhythm guitar, and you started to really work on the harmonies with them.
Mm-hmm.
Those soaring harmonies, kind of really unique phrasing, the way you approach a song, and it kind of brought in an element to what Gene and Roger were doing. And then Mr. Tambourine Man. You got an advance copy or something from Dixon, did, right? Jim Dixon,
yes.
And showed it to you. Tell me that story.
So we released Please Let Me Love You, and it didn't make it. I remember showing it to Brian Wilson. He said, well, you're almost there. You know, keep working at it. You're coming along. So Jim Dixon had an advanced copy. He was riding around L.A., and he listened to a couple of producers talking about Bob Dylan, saying, you know, it's a shame Bob can't use that great new hit because somebody was singing out of tune on it. It turned out Ramblin' Jack Elliott had recorded harmony, and he'd had a little, you know, tipple, and he was out of tune on this demo. Well, it was intended not to be a demo. It was intended to be the record.
What Roger told me is Dylan had cut it, but somebody had played wrong or out of tune or something.
No, he cut a demo with Ramblin' Jack Elliott. It was terrible. Ramblin' Jack didn't know the song. Bob does that to people. He did it to me. They didn't know the song, so they were just kind of cruising through it. And they were vaguely in the same area, but that's all it was. But Roger, he listened to it and he knew that it was a good song. I thought at first, because the demo was so terrible, I was just put off by it. But I knew Bob, and I knew how good he was. You know, I kept listening to the words, and Roger figured out how to make the record.
And so Dixon got a copy of it sent out from Whitmark and Sons, happened to be Dylan's publisher in New York at the time. And he had it, and he played it for us. And it sounded like, hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. I'm not sleepy and there is no place I'm going to. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. In the jingle jangle morning I'll come by. Crosby said, I don't like it, man. He said that folky 2/4 time is not going to play on the radio. And I agreed with him because they weren't playing a lot of 2/4 folk songs anymore. So I've been playing around on my guitar with a little. I said, what if I put some of that on the front for an intro and put it on the back for an outro, and we cut it down to one verse for time because radio wouldn't play anything over 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and then change the beat from a 2/4 to a 4/4, like, which was really a Phil Spector beat. He kind of came up with that with the Wrecking Crew. Yeah, that was. But the Beatles picked up on it, and they were doing it, and then all the bands were doing it. So I put it to that, and it came out. Hey, Mr. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. I'm not sleepy, and there ain't no place I'm going to. Tambourine Man, play a song for me. In the jingle jangle morning, I'll come following you. And then we cut it down to that one verse, and we picked the verse about the boot heels. Beatles had these cool boots. Dixon made us audition to see who was going to sing the lead. And so Crosby didn't like it. He didn't want to bother. And Gene Clark and I tried it out. And I got the to lead because I combined a little bit of John Lennon and a little bit of Bob Dylan. I purposely tried to aim for that niche between the two of them.
When Bob Dylan first heard it, he loved it because he said, you can dance to it. Tell me that.
Jim Dixon was friends with Bob Dylan. He invited Bob and his friend Bobby Neuwirth to come over to the World Pacific Studios where we were rehearsing. And we played a few songs for Bob, some of his songs. And after one of his songs, he said, what was that? I said, that was one of your songs, man. He said, oh, I didn't recognize it. And then we played Mr. Tambourine Man with the rock beat and shortened down version. And he loved it. He loved it. And he gave us his full approval. But when it started to go out, Albert Grossman tried to stop it. He tried to kill it, but he couldn't because it had too much momentum. Grossman wasn't in on the loop, but with Bob, it's like Bob gave it to us kind of casually as a personal favor. But Grossman was a business guy, and he didn't want Bob's great song to get away before Bob did it.
Take me on a trip upon your magic swirling ship.
And when you guys went in and recorded Mr. Tambourine Man, you started working with Terry, right?
Terry Melcher, yeah.
And he wanted to use a wrecking crew. And what people mistake is that the wrecking crew didn't play on the entire album. They just played on that one song.
Well, it's that one song on the flip side, I Knew I'd Want You. I was the only Byrd allowed on the sessions because I was a studio musician. And I could play with the studio guys and not mess it up. As you can imagine, David and Gene and Chris were all upset that they didn't get to play on it. And they yelled and screamed. And so we got it so they could play on it. But I have to say in favor of the Wrecking Crew, I'm not sure the Byrds would have had a hit without them. And also, it took us, we got Mr. Tambourine Man and I Knew I'd Want You in one 3-hour session. It took 77 takes to get Turn, Turn, Turn with the real Byrds playing. So that's the difference. And that's why the Wrecking Crew was in business, because they could knock them off like that. They had studio chops that were just up to there. They played all day long every day.
I don't want to denigrate anybody else, that was in the Byrds, but I think Roger was about half the group in terms of musical knowledge and talent. He was a very good singer, very good storyteller with the singing, and a great player. Maybe even better than the guitar playing was his ability to arrange and record a song. He had a very clear vision of how to do that.
And you guys' sound inspired so many people that came after, from REM, the Smiths. Those bands in the 80s, the guitar bands, they very much idolized that sound. You remember the first time you heard one of your songs on the radio? Do you remember where you were? Tell me that story.
Exactly. We, the Byrds, had bought Odetta's 1956 Ford station wagon. And all 5 of us and the equipment were driving down Sunset Boulevard. And all of a sudden, KRLA, we got it on, and it goes, and we went bonkers. We went completely nuts. But it gets better. We pulled over so we could listen to it, and they did something that I've never heard them do before or since they played it again. They finished the song and started it again.
Really?
Right there. They played it twice. And we were just like jumping around on the sidewalk like idiots. We thought, wow, this is the greatest thing in life. Pretty great.
And then, of course, it hit #1 and really ushered in a lot of folk rock.
What we did was, one thing we really did actually do is we put really good lyrics on the radio first time. Up till then, ooh, baby. Ooh, baby, ooh.
Because even the Beatles, She Loves You, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Ooh, baby. To dance beneath the diamond sky with one hand waving free.
Dance beneath a diamond sky with one hand waving free.
Better. Much better lyric. And that was, I think we did the other stuff right too. The guitars were right and the harmonies were good and all that stuff. But I think the biggest push forward we made was to put that kind of lyrics, Bob's lyrics, on the radio. And nobody had ever done anything like that before.
Take me for trip upon your magic.
When Mr. Tambourine Man hit #1, were you surprised at all, or what were you feeling at that moment?
Yeah, I was surprised. First of all, I was surprised that they even released it, because we recorded it January 21st of 1965, and January went by, February went by, March went by, April went by. They didn't release it. I don't know why. And then it finally came out, and it got up the charts in June '65. So in those 3 or 4 months, I'd almost given up hope on the Byrds. I thought, this isn't going to happen, man. And Dino Valenti was pitching me on another band. He said, we're going to wear spacesuits and have wireless microphones. And I'm a techie, so that appealed to me. I thought that would be really cool. I almost went off and did some other band, but I stuck with it.
A little known fact, most of the Byrds band members didn't actually play on the song. Now, Roger McGuinn played guitar and he sang lead, while David Crosby and Gene Clark sang those signature harmonies. But the Wrecking Crew played the other instruments, including Hal Blaine on drums and the great Leon Russell on piano. Interesting. Make sure to leave us a comment about this masterwork of the 1960s. What are your thoughts of the song, on the song, and about the Byrds and this pivotal time in the 1960s? I mean, 64 to 68, just incredible. What are your memories of hearing the song for the first time? If you like this video, we would love to invite you to be a full-time part of our community by subscribing below, if you'll do that now. Also, we invite you to check us out on Patreon for more content. Give it a look. Help us keep the music alive. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.